a copyrighted program created by Rio Grande.
Los Angeles Police calling all cars, attention all cars, broadcast 280 regarding a man abusing a woman. Assist the officers. That's all. Roll ready.
Why wait until the crime has been committed? Until your motor has been broken down with inferior oil? When you could keep your car on the straight and narrow, making it impossible for it to go wrong by protecting it with Realube. I say Realube, and so do tens of thousands of motorists. Because this pure 100% paraffin-based lubricant covers every vital moving part with a bulletproof set. So impenetrable that the machine gun fired at highest speed, plus the heat barrage of the hottest weather cannot break it down. It's the way Realube is made, friends, that makes it a better motor oil. First of all, it is tempered, refined, and purified in one of the nation's most modern and scientific refineries. Then, before it is sent on its way to the Rio Grande station in your neighborhood, Realube is purged of all sludge and carbon-forming elements which were allowed to remain in varying degrees in many of the so-called good motor oils. Have you driven 1,000 miles since the last oil change? Then now is the time to have the crankcase drained and put in Realube, or Rio Grande, Pennsylvania. Have it done in the morning, friends, when you get a tank full of Rio Grande cracked gasoline, the gasoline that is first in public service. The facts upon which tonight's story are based have been taken from the files of the sheriff of Los Angeles County. We have therefore asked Major Edmund L. Green to open our program.
One of the most atrocious and at the same time one of the most difficult cases for peace officers to break occurs when some maladjusted man runs amok and commits a series of outrages such as form the basis of our program tonight. It is the opinion of the officers of the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department that programs such as Calling All Cars are instrumental in bringing to public attention the efforts of the police in solving cases of this sort. Despite newspaper publicity to the contrary, police officers are unrelenting in their pursuit of this type of criminal. It is unfortunate that at present such crimes cannot always be prevented. But no law enforcement officer ever lets up for a minute in his efforts to capture the criminal and to impress upon him the losing nature of a life of crime. I shall have additional facts for you at the end of the program.
On the night of March 14th, 1935, newsboys in Los Angeles echoed screaming headlines. The Eighth Man. So was titled a cruel and vicious man who had struck twice on the same night, leaving his victims beaten and bloody. In the office of Captain Wallace of the Homicide Squad the following day, Detective Lieutenant Sanderson, Joseph, Sweetie, and Brown are in conference.
What do you think we'd better do, Captain Wallace? Trouble with these cases is lack of motive, except for lust. We haven't anything to work on. There isn't much we can do, Sanderson, until you can talk to the two assault victims. We may get word from the emergency hospital any minute to come on out.
Yeah, they were both unable to talk last night. Still groggy from being beat up.
Lucas, you're sure that you and Brown didn't overlook anything on the first case, Mrs. Brady?
Positive. Bad and I weren't the only ones that looked. We had all the neighbors helping us. There were flashlights all over the place, turning into every nook and cranny for blocks around.
That's right. There wasn't a single clue. Whoever the assailant was, he was scared off by Mrs. Brady's calls for help.
Yeah, you see, the neighbors came running out, and the eighth man, as the papers told him, ran away.
I have Oliver's report here on fingerprints photographed at Mrs. Everett's house.
Oh, you got them back. Do any good?
Not much, you see. We have his record here, but we're sending the prints to the FBI. We never catch this eighth man. They're all we need to fix him up, and I don't mean murder.
Are those the fingerprints that were taken on the table leg?
Yeah, the one he hit her with. She's in worse shape than the first one, Mrs. Brady. If Mrs. Everett has put up quite a battle.
Yeah, you ought to see that house. Blood splattered all over the walls. She was a tough little lady.
I've often wondered what would happen if a woman went accosted as these women were. Instead of putting up a fight, they'd sort of give in for the time being and watch for a good opportunity and stop their assailant at some vital spot.
I thought the same thing. In fact, I told my wife to do just that if she found herself in a spot like that.
Of course, it's pretty hard not to fight back when somebody rushes you suddenly. And yet, if a woman could keep her wits about her, I've got a hunch she'd win.
Well, anyway, that doesn't solve these two cases. Being still at large, he'll never strike again without warning. You boys have to find him. That's all there's to it. Oh, maybe this is the hospital. Captain Wallace speaking. Yeah. They are? Good. I'll send them in right over. Okay for you boys to get over and talk to the victims. I think you and Casey will be enough, Anderson.
Okay,
Right away.
I'd ask you fellas to go easy on these women. Suffering terribly from shock as well as from the beating they were given. Just don't tire them. Okay, we'll talk to Mrs. Brady first. Speak, Miss Brady?
No, Doctor.
I have a couple of officers here. They want to ask you a few questions. You're strong enough to answer them?
I'll try. But it's so hard to talk.
I know, but just take it easy. Okay, Lieutenant. Sorry to have to bother you at a time like this, Mrs. Brady, but we're very anxious to solve your case. Please tell me your own words just what happened.
Well, I was coming home last evening around 7 o'clock. I was walking down Russell Avenue. I was just about a block from my home when I noticed I was being followed. I tried not to appear nervous or quicken my pace, but it was getting dark, and I was a little bit afraid.
Was it a white man?
Yes.
Do you know where it came from?
No, I don't. He must have stepped out from behind a tree or a bush.
I see.
I guess it was just by sheer willpower that I kept from breaking into a run. I could hear him closing in on me. Suddenly, he made a rush at me. Oh! You're hurting me. Let loose.
Shut up.
Please. Please. Let me go.
Be quiet.
Let me go. You're hurting my arm. Please.
There. Oh, just... yeah, out like a light. Heavy, too. Uh-oh. Somebody's coming. So long, lady. So long.
He knocked me down, and I lay there unconscious. He must have been frightened away by the neighbors my scene had arrived. He sent for the police and an ambulance. Well, you know the rest of the story.
Well, we certainly hope you have a speedy recovery, Mrs. Brady.
Thank you. And I hope you can catch the thief.
Well, we're doing all we can. Now, one other question. Could you give me a description of this slugger?
I have a picture in my mind I'll never forget. It resembled nothing human.
And what is that description, Mrs. Brady?
Well, he was short, slender, and had a face like some animal. He had dark, swarthy skin, and his lips were cruel and snarling like a beast. He had large hands and long arms like an ape. They were awfully strong. They made bruises on my arms.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think your description will help us a lot.
Oh, I hope so. Anything would be much too good for him.
Much too good, Mrs. Brady. And thank you so much. Just rest and try to get well.
Thank you.
Pretty bad shape, isn't she, Doctor?
Yes. She doesn't know it yet, but she's going to lose her eye. And then hit her that hard.
Yeah, I'd like to get my hands on that thing.
Me too. Here's Mrs. Evers' room. She's older and in much worse shape.
Be as quick as we can.
Yes, please do. Mrs. Evers?
Yes, Doctor.
Do you feel strong enough to answer a few questions? The two officers here from headquarters who wish to ask a few.
I'll try, Doctor.
Could you give us a description of the man, Mrs. Evers?
Yes. He was dark and short. He had long arms like a monkey. And his powerful hands that gripped like a steel trap.
And what did his face look like?
It was horrible. Not at first. But when he struck at me, it was like an animal. Sharp white teeth and a cruel mouth that seemed to be snarling. I'll never forget his face as long as I live.
Your description takes from Mrs. Brady. Now, if you can, will you describe what took place?
I'll try. I was sitting home alone. It was about 8:30 or 8:45 when I heard a knock. That must be Henry. It can't be. Henry has his key. All right, I'm coming. I wonder who it is. Yes?
Is the man of the house here?
Why, no, he's away. Is there anything I can do for you?
Yes, ma'am. If you will, please. I was wondering if you had any work I could do in the yard or the garden. I haven't had anything to eat all day.
Oh, you poor man. Come in. I'll fix you something in a jiffy.
Gee, thanks, lady. I sure appreciate that.
Oh, don't mention it. Just sit down and make yourself comfortable. Maybe you'd like to come out in the kitchen and talk while I work.
Don't make no difference, lady. I'll wait in the front room.
Whatever you wish. I won't be long. I'll brew up some good coffee and I'll think I'll put some things in the bread box. You go ahead and make yourself. It'll be ready in just a minute. The coffee's almost done now. I'm sorry I don't have much else to give you besides taste.
It sure smells swell.
You might as well come on out. You can begin on the taste.
You sure must make good coffee if I'm any judge of smells.
Oh, I don't know. I make it just like anybody else does it here. Now sit down over there at the table.
I don't know how to thank you, lady.
Don't try to. Here, help yourself to some bread and cake. I found a piece of pie, too.
Oh, good.
I'll just set the coffee pot here on the table and you can eat all you want.
You sure are swell to do this for me.
I'll go on in the front room and take your time.
Yeah, you sure will. It ain't very often that a fellow runs into a lady like you. When you're as hungry as me, you begin to think everybody's against you.
I'll be glad to get more coffee for you if you want it.
No thanks, lady. That was swell. But,
Yes?
well, if you could spare a dime, lady, for crosshair.
Why, of course. My purse is in the bedroom. I'll go get it.
Gee, thanks.
I think I've got a loose quarter here. You're welcome to that. Yes. And maybe you can... Oh.
Come here.
Oh, no. Don't let me.
Oh, no. No, you don't. Well, for a guy your age, you're sure pretty tough. But that table leg stopped you. Yeah, I knocked out two of her teeth.
you're coming through, are you? Well, I'll just take the money out of your purse and feed it. Well, so long, lady, and thanks for everything.
I lay there until I was sure he was gone. And then I dragged myself to the front door and out on the street where I was picked up and brought here.
It took several hours before she could speak. Her throat muscles were paralyzed by the man's strangling hands.
Well, thank you, Mrs. Evers. I'm sure we'll catch this fellow in a few days. And you just rest and try to get back your strength.
Thank you, officer.
She sure must have put up a terrific battle. She's not any too young, either.
The mighty game little lady, but no match for this slugger.
Well, we'll catch him all. That's the only worry I have, is that he may strike again before we can catch him.
The officers made several trips back to the hospital for additional information. They took notebooks from headquarters, hoping the injured women might recognize their assailant among the many pictures of known criminals. But they were doomed to disappointment. The fiend was not among them. And then, on the third day...
I'd like to see Captain Wallace, Miss Wallace. Tell him Mr. Evers. I'm the husband of one of the women that was beaten by the ape man.
Just a moment. Mr. Evers to see you, Captain. Okay. Go right in, Mr. Evers.
Yes, sir.
Morning, Mr. Evans. Have a chair.
Thank you, sir.
Now then, what can I do for you?
I'm the husband of Mrs. Evers, one of the women who was beaten by the ape man with the papers referred to him.
Yes, I assumed as much.
I have some information I thought you might find some value.
Regarding the assailant?
Yes.
Can you know who it was?
I know of a man who might be the one. You see, I keep a diary of everything that happens each day, no matter how trivial.
That's interesting.
Yes. Now, I have here an entry on July 17th of last year that a man came to my home and applied for work as a gardener. I employed him for the day, and while he was there, we engaged in several conversations. He appeared deeply interested in religious matters, and of course I'm a doctor of divinity.
Yes, go on.
Well, I noticed that he quite frequently digressed from the subject of religion to make some inappropriate allusion to other matters. His mind seemed to dwell on such things. His viewpoint struck me as rather extraordinary. You see, I've made somewhat of a study of human nature.
Do you know if Mrs. Evers was acquainted with this man? Did she see him at any time?
I believe not. What gave me the idea was that my wife's assailant asked for some kind of gardening work, and it all seems to fit together.
You're positive your wife never saw this man or that he saw her?
Oh, positive. At that time, she was in a sanitarium, recovering from an illness. Now I'll come to the point. The description my wife gave me of her attacker is very similar to that of this man Duggar, and I'm
just a moment, Dr. Evers. Did I hear you say his name?
Of course. I have it right here. T.E. Duggar. I have his address here, too, I believe. Yes, it is his exact address. I'll write it down for you on a strip of paper.
I think we'll get on, Dr. Evers. Your story seems to fit the slugger to a T. I'll send two of my men out to this address right away. If he still lives there, he'll be in jail within an hour.
A few minutes later, Detective Lieutenant L.E. Sanderson and Detective Lieutenant Ray E. Beasley are at the address Dr. Evers had given Captain Walker.
This is the place. They just said we want to interview Duggar about a traffic accident he witnessed.
Yeah, no use arguing for
I hope he's in.
So do I.
Yes? We'd like to see Mr. T.E. Duggar. He witnessed a traffic accident, and we'd like to talk to him about it. Is he in?
No, he's moved.
Oh? Any idea where?
No, but I heard someone say he was living in a rooming house in the Westlake district.
Do you have the address?
No, I don't. Seems to me it's off the Temple Street.
By the way, you don't seem to be terribly pleased with his memory. What do you do for a living?
He never had any steady job. Personally, I'd call him a tramp gardener.
Why?
Well, I knew he kept some garden tools in his room. Sort of a shiftless man.
Aside from that, he was a pretty decent sort of fellow, wasn't he?
Well, to tell you the truth, I was glad to get rid of him. He's always chasing some woman.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah. One of my tenants complained that he'd made advances to her in the hallway, so I told him to get out.
Oh, I see. You seen him since he left?
He calls her occasionally to ask for mail. If you want to leave your names, I'll give him the message. Next time I see him.
Thanks. I expect you'll be able to locate him through other channels. But if he comes back, phone us at Michigan 5211, will you please? And thanks very much for your service.
Quite all right.
Well, that's right. Let's go down and check the registrar of voters. Maybe we can locate this new address.
The list of registered voters showed the name of C.E. Duggar with an address on Lake Shore Avenue in the Westlake district. The trail was getting warmer, but a few minutes later, the two officers talked to the manager of the apartment house at their address.
I'm sorry, but Duggar moved away from here about 2 weeks ago.
Oh, well, the man we're looking for is rather small and very dark complexion.
That's the fella. He's got fights with the nurse who lived here, and I kicked him out.
That's Duggar, all right. Any idea where he is now?
Not exactly, but I'm pretty sure he lives out this way somewhere. Still does a little gardening for some of the neighbors around here.
Well, I guess we've done all we can here. Thanks for the information.
You're quite welcome.
The two officers made daily trips to the Westlake district, cruising up and down the various streets, looking, always looking. Every short, dark man was carefully scrutinized, and particular attention was paid to all gardeners. But the eighth man had seemingly disappeared. On the night of March 23rd, the officers were staked out in their car, watching and waiting. The ceaseless downpour of rain drenched Los Angeles. Drama was being enacted in another part of the city. Near Echo Park, a woman was sitting at her desk writing letters. Suddenly she stopped, gripped by the terrifying realization that she was not alone. Trembling, she got to her feet and, turning, saw a masked man standing in the doorway.
What do you want?
I want some money. Come here.
Oh, no. No.
Oh, so you're going to put me away. We'll go back. What's on that phone?
No, I won't.
Replace the receiver.
Oh, no. I have no money on my computer.
Shut up.
Hours later, the woman revived and called the police. Officers Sanderson and Heath answered the call. A thorough search of the house revealed little of interest except that the intruder wore gloves. As soon as the woman was able to talk, the two officers were at her bedside, asking questions.
When you were sent to the emergency hospital, you said you didn't have any idea who your assailant might be. Are you still of the same opinion?
My mind's a little clear now. He wore a mask all the time, but I'm sure I recognize him.
You know the name?
No, it's positive. The name he gave me was Rugger. He's a gardener who did some work for me just a few days ago.
Well, then. What else do you know about him?
He tried to get to my house, but I refused to admit it. When I gave him his lunch, he said it was too hot to eat outdoors. I'd insisted on coming inside.
Did you let him in?
No,
You didn't get any others, did you?
not the exact address, but he said he lived in the 700 block on Bonnie Drive. Oh, you'll find him.
We'll find him all right, don't worry. We only want you to get well as soon as possible so you can testify against him in court.
You can count on me.
Good. Come on, Ray. Let's have a look at that 700 block on Bonnie Bray.
20 minutes later, the two officers were carefully looking over the apartment houses and rooming houses in the 700 block.
Which one looks the most likely to use?
Oh, I don't know. How about that one over there?
I'm sort of denying that one, too. Let's try it.
Okay. I'll park the car a few doors away.
Yeah, you might be keeping a lookout for cops.
This is a good place. We'll park here.
We might put up a fight. Better be ready for some rough stuff.
I'll be ready.
Let's hope he hasn't moved away from here, too.
Here comes somebody.
Good afternoon.
We're from police headquarters, and we're looking for a man named Duggar or Rugger. Do you have anybody living here by that name?
Yes, I do. His name is Thomas Edward Duggar. But he's not in just now.
Oh.
Will you come in?
Yes, thanks. We'd like to ask you a few questions.
Why, of course. Come right in. Come in here in the living room. Now then, let you sit down. My name is Mrs. Edwards.
Oh, Mrs. Edwards. Mrs. Edwards, who lives here with us?
My daughter does. And, of course, Mr. Duggar. Moved in with us, about 2 weeks ago Monday.
Well, that would be the 11th. That's it. Mrs. Brady and Mrs. Edwards. Let's see, that was the 14th. Yeah. What's his occupation?
He's a gardener. That is, when he can get work to do.
I see. He doesn't have much money and tries to economize, maybe?
Yes, that's true. He does quite a bit of washing. He can be very particular about keeping his clothes clean. And we often hear him scrubbing them in the bathroom.
Oh, that's interesting.
Mr. Duggar isn't in any trouble, is he?
Well, I tell you, Mrs. Edwards, I seem you ought to know about this.
Yes?
I'm making a police investigation, and I'd like to have your cooperation.
Oh, why, of course, I'll be glad to help you all I can.
And your daughter, too. Yes. Now, tell me, Mrs. Edwards, what did Mr. Duggar do last Saturday? We want to know where he was and what time he left the house and all about him.
Well, now, let me see. Came home early in the afternoon, as he usually does. Left again about 7 o'clock. He was out quite late. I know, because his key wouldn't unlock the door, and I had to get up and let him in. Oh, it was after 3 in the morning.
Go on.
Well, he got up early Sunday morning. It couldn't have been later than 7 o'clock. My daughter and I heard him go into the bathroom. It sounded as though he was washing clothes. We remarked about it at the time. That time later he left. Then he came back about 9. And this time we were sure we heard him washing.
He's certainly clean for a gardener. Yeah, almost too clean.
Well, he went out again about 10. We didn't see him until evening. We've been working in the daytime for the last 2 days and staying home nights. Well, I believe that's about all there is to tell.
Now, tell me, have you always acted perfectly proper around the house here?
Well, there is something else. Perhaps I should tell you.
What is that, Mrs. Edwards?
Well, that Mr. Duggar the other night. My daughter and Mr. Duggar and myself were all sitting in here reading, and suddenly Mr. Duggar jumped up and rushed over to me and threw his arms around my neck.
And what did he say?
He said, "Oh, won't you please be a mother to me?" I remember his very words. My daughter and I both tried to laugh it off, but we were really worried about it. And we were sorry we'd ever rented the room to him.
Naturally. But that checks exactly with the information we have concerning it.
And when do you expect him to
That's him coming in now.
Come on, did you grab him before he knows what's up?
Hello, Mother.
Just a minute. Hey,
I got it.
Okay.
Now then. Your name Duggar?
Yeah, that's my name. But I ain't done nothing.
Would you mind leaving the room, Mrs. Edwards? We'd like to ask this man a few questions.
Oh, certainly, officer. I'll be back in the kitchen.
Now, Mr. Duggar, suppose you explain your actions last Saturday night.
Saturday night? Well, it was raining. About 7 o'clock, I went over to a cafe on Sunset Boulevard and had something to eat. After that, I went to a picture show. I got out about 9:30 and went straight home. I was in bed before 10.
You're lying.
Lying about what?
You didn't get home until after 3. Mrs. Edwards had to let you in because your key wouldn't unlock the door.
That was you who beat up those women and we not.
Oh, what women? I never beat anybody. I don't know what you're talking about.
And what about Mrs. Edwards having to let you in after 3 o'clock?
Well, I
Now, wait a minute. Well, here comes the singer.
Yeah. You know whose that is, Ray?
No, who?
Mrs. Edwards.
That's right. She died last Thursday, didn't she?
Who's Mrs. Evers?
I'll tell you. On March 14th, a man went to Mrs. Evers' home and asked for some food.
No,
Oh, I didn't mean to hurt him.
And she let that man in.
No, I couldn't help myself. I can't help it.
And that man repaid her kindness by beating her almost to death.
Please stop me. I can't help it. I can't. That's how I am.
And that man was you, Sugar. You're right. That's how you are. And you'll hang for it.
In just a moment, we shall hear the concluding facts regarding our program. If your car is below par, everything seems to go wrong. Make the week ahead run smoothly by ensuring the maximum efficiency of your car with the sure-fire protection of Realube motor oil and the money-saving power of police car performance Rio Grande Craft, the most highly recommended gasoline sold in the West. And now, Major Green.
Duggar's trial developed nothing new regarding his crimes. He was speedily convicted, then was later hanged at San Quentin. His criminal career extended back over several years. But like all criminals, he found that crime cannot pay.
Thank you, Major Green.
Police calling all cars, attention all cars, the cancellation of broadcast 280 regarding a slugging suspect. This man apprehended and hanged. That's all. Those who
Frederick Lindsay, bidding you good night for Rio Grande.
Next week at this time, Rio Grande will present Death in the Canyon. This is the Columbia Broadcasting System.